Hey everybody, good morning from Guam. Chuck Holton here. And for those of you who don't have time to watch my hour-long lives that I'm doing every day, I understand because I don't have time to watch my hour-long lives either. And so I'm making this condensed update with all of the key information that I shared in the live today for you that only have a few minutes on your way to work or something like that. So today we're talking about the annual threat assessment of the United States intelligence community, which just came out. It's an annual report that's released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who is now Tulsi Gabbard. And she appeared before a Senate subcommittee yesterday to talk about the threats that we face as a nation. And so there are some interesting findings in this year's report. And so I just want to go through the key themes from the report with you very quickly, and I'll get this done as quick as we can. Okay, so number one, the United States is facing a very complex threat environment that is evolving as we speak. And that evolution comes from both non-state actors, which are like criminals, transnational criminal organizations, cartels, terrorists, things like that, and state actors, which are countries, China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, for the most part. That's those four. Now, one of the things that this report has found is that there is increasing cooperation among our adversaries against the United States. So when it comes to cybercrime, there are Russian hackers working with the Russian government who are also cooperating with Chinese hackers or Iranian hackers to attack American industry, the economy, everything from schools to hospitals and things like that. And actually, the cyber realm is probably the place where Americans are going to feel these threats the most because of the extraordinary security measures that are going to have to be taken in order to counter these threats and are having to be taken. If you've wondered why it takes you 10 minutes to log into your bank account to just check your balance for 30 seconds because of all of the, two-factor authentication and a token and, all this crazy stuff you have to do just to get in, that's why, because our adversaries are learning to work together to threaten America, and this is definite problem that is making everything more expensive. Part of the reason why it's harder to afford things today is because of these adversaries taking advantage of and weaponizing our open capitalistic economy against us. And so that's a big problem that needs to be dealt with by the current administration. So whether you're talking about cyber war or weapons of mass destruction, even capabilities in space, or weaponizing, influencing other domains, so like using proxy forces, like Iran has been doing, all of those things are coming into play, and they're learning to have some synergies and work together to threaten America. That's a big problem. So starting with the non-state threats, first of all, drug cartels, mostly from Mexico, responsible for the most U.S. deaths of any of the adversaries that we face. So China, through the Mexican drug cartels, has killed about 52,000 U.S. Citizens last year just from fentanyl. Now, that's down by quite a bit. It was 70,000 plus the year before. And part of the reason is because of the, it's easier to get Noxalone, that, antidote to fentanyl. Now they've started to really push that out to the streets and help people not die from fentanyl overdoses as much as they were before. There are now independent fentanyl producers in Mexico, which are sort of fragmenting the cartel control. It's going to make it harder for the United States to go after these guys. Of course, they're also engaging in other profitable enterprises like human trafficking, cybercrime, fraud, kidnapping, things like that. There are terror groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda, which are continuing to target the United States, especially the ISIS Khorasan out of Afghanistan. They're the most externally capable faction of the Islamic State that exists today. And it's a direct result of the United States precipitously pulling out of Afghanistan, uh, back in 2020. And so that was a big, big problem. Now, I'm sorry, was that 2021? Um, now, China. China is our most capable adversary in terms of weaponry, in terms of their just total reach. They are seeking global leadership by 2049. That's their ultimate goal. And that specifically mentions or includes artificial intelligence and semiconductors and biotechnology, as well as military power. So, all of those things they are pursuing, and that's one of the reasons why they think that China will probably invade Taiwan between somewhere around 2027, because they want Taiwan's capabilities for producing very high tech computer chips, and so they're working to take some steps in Taiwan now, working together with the United States to try to keep that from being as much of an issue, because they're going to move a lot of their operations to the United States and put kill switches on their machines and stuff so that they'll just fry everything if China does happen to invade. But they'll probably invade anyway, to get whatever they can, and because they believe that they are that Taiwan belongs to China. They are increasing their ability to project power. They've got a third aircraft carrier that's going to be operational this year, and that is a concern. The United States has 12, so we're still way ahead of them, but that makes their military a lot more expeditionary, so that they can move forces to other countries now instead of just threatening the countries in the immediate region. They are working very hard on what are called malign influence campaigns. These malign influence campaigns are using, like, for example, AI generated disinformation and campaigns to divide Americans socially and politically. If you are wondering why America just seems to be at each other's throats these days, it's because of a lot of encouragement to that end by the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians and others. So they have specific cultural espionage campaigns. TikTok was one of them, to try to damage or destroy America's internal cohesion. And that's something that we can all guard against by just not playing their game. I don't use TikTok. I'm not gonna do that. And I'm gonna try to use the internet to bring people together and not to drive people apart. So then they're also making rapid advances in space, believe it or not, with ISR weapons, and they have ambitions to dominate moon missions and access to the Arctic. So there's that. Now, moving on to Russia, Russia still poses a very strategic threat despite the losses that they've taken in Ukraine. This report says that the Russians have suffered more than 750,000 casualties in the war in Ukraine so far. 750, just think about that. Think about a city with 750,000 people. It's a big city. And they've killed that entire city, just of Russian troops in Ukraine. The Ukrainians have lost far fewer than that. It's still an egregious number, 70 or 80,000, getting probably close to 100,000 casualties. And that is because the Ukrainians put a much higher premium on human life. And so they don't send their guys into the meat grinder like Russia does. But Russia has still got millions of peasants out there in the third world part of Russia that they can draw on to continue to threaten their neighbors. And they are regaining momentum in Ukraine because of that, this war of attrition. And with the Trump administration pulling back from their support of Ukraine, that has only emboldened Russia more. And that doesn't just stay in Ukraine. That means that Russia is emboldened to attack Western Europe with these asymmetric methods that they use. Tulsi Gabbard actually admitted to that in the Senate committee hearing, which was surprising to me because she's been very pro-Russian and very anti-Ukrainian. But she was forced to admit in this hearing that Russia is engaging in acts of war on the ground in Europe. She didn't go so far as to admit to that happening in the United States, but I believe it is happening in the United States, especially with some of these wildfires we've seen in places that don't normally get wildfires recently. The Arctic, of course, Russia wants expanding presence with help from China to, use those as trade routes and things like that. They are also cooperating with China and Iran on these influence operations to target U.S. elections, to degrade public trust, and social engineer a collapse in the United States. Iran is still pursuing making lots and lots of lethal drones and missiles, and that regional influence that they have via their proxies. So they're not just making them, but they're spreading them out and giving them to the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah and anybody else that'll take them, as long as they'll use them against Israel. Tehran is officially denying that they're doing that, but the proof is there. I mean, there's all these Iranian missiles raining down from places like Yemen and Gaza and Lebanon. So, duh. I mean, it's obvious that the Iranians are still pushing that kind of sort of passive aggressiveness by using these proxies. And they currently, according to this report, they currently don't have a nuclear weapons program. But that's just because they don't claim to have one. But they do have a very robust nuclear program. And they say that it's only for power, for generation, but it just takes, turning a knob essentially to convert that into weapons grade uranium that could be used in a nuclear bomb in a matter of weeks. And so it is a serious issue. Another issue, as pointed out in the report, is that Iran is targeting former U.S. officials. So if you're a former, like Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, traveling around the world gets a lot more dangerous for you because there are literally cells of Iranian terrorists that are hunting U.S. officials and wanting to kill them, not just outside the U.S., but even on U.S. soil. That's been going on for a long time. My friend Oliver North had Iranian operatives coming after him and his family. And so that is an increasing challenge because Iran is just that's the only way they can fight the United States is through those asymmetric means. North Korea, the fact that they're strengthening ties with Russia is not a good thing, and that they're getting a lot of advice and technology from Russia that they didn't have before to expand their ICBM program, their hypersonic missile program, and other capabilities, and their cyber war programs. All of that is doesn't bode well for the region, and it doesn't bode well for the United States. Now, the fact that the U.S. is pulling back from its role as a global protector is not going to be good for the United States or the world in many ways, but one of the ways that's pointed out by Peter Zeihan just recently is that it's pushing some of our allies to pursue their own nuclear weapons. So massive nuclear proliferation around the globe, simply because those countries are not sure if they can trust the United States to come to their aid if they get in trouble. So like South Korea doesn't have time to build up its army to be a peer power against North Korea, but they do have time to create a nuclear weapon. And South Korea could do a sprint to a nuclear weapon in a matter of weeks. So we may see a lot more nuclear weapons on planet Earth very shortly, which doesn't make anybody safer. And that's just another reason why maybe it's not such a bad thing for the United States to invest in being the world's guarantor of security on the high seas, at least. So again, just to sum up, the cooperation between our adversaries is a big problem as they're learning to work together to come at us. And the ways they're coming at us have a lot less to do with tanks and helicopters and have a lot more to do with fraud, abuse, cybercrime, and these sort of cultural espionage operations that are meant to divide us. And so that and fentanyl are probably the biggest threats that we face in America. And it's something we all need to be aware of, and something we can do something about. So please go to chuckholton.com. I'm putting up the full text of this report over there for you to read. And I'm going to put up a summary if you don't want to read the whole thing because it's really long. I'll put up a summary over there as well, but you'll have to be a supporter to get the summary. We're putting up a lot of extra bonus content that is worth having. Plus, you can get access to my most recent books, to download free copies of those. You can get access to some of my documentaries and a new documentary we're going to be coming out in the next week or two. So all of that makes it worthwhile to go to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there. But make sure that you also like and subscribe the podcast here on YouTube. That tells YouTube that more people need to see this, and it'd be a big favor to me if you would do that. So God bless you. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.